Middle Path Radio, your number one online Islamic talk station.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. You're listening to Middle Path Radio. I'm Kamal Hussein. Thank you for joining us and welcome to another evening of Straight Talk. We have an interesting lineup for you tonight. We are honored to have with us two special guests who have joined us for the first time in this show. Before I introduce our guest, quick reminder for everyone. We will break for Maghrib Salah at 9:20, 9:25. And we'll resume after 10 minutes, inshallah. So please stay tuned. You can take part in tonight's discussion by calling or texting 074 77080 248, or you can tweet us at Middle Path Radio. You can also listen to this show from our website, which is straight-talk.co.uk, featuring all our previous shows, which you can listen online, inshallah. So tonight is the last show before Ramadan. So inshallah, we will resume after Eid. So please follow us on Twitter and our website for up-to-date news and views, inshallah. Since it's Ramadan is around the corner, I really want to discuss how we can make the most of this blessed month. So tonight is going to be more nasiha than discussing any controversial issues. As we await the month of Ramadan, struggling and blessing, struggling and looking for the blessing, where we will fast long days, pray Taraweeh, which will end really late, and try and complete the Qur'an in this month, inshallah. I want to look at how the Sahabas and our scholars in the past viewed what others and what other actions they did during this month, inshallah. So here to discuss and give us nasiha on this blessed month of Ramadan, we have our two distinguished guests. We're honored to have with us Sheikh Fahim Al-Anam. He is the Imam and Khatib of Darul Ummah. He is a lecturer on a variety of Islamic topics and a teacher of classical Arabic language. Very well known and well respected Imam in our community, alhamdulillah. Also, we have with us Brother Nazrul Abu Yasser, who is a secondary school teacher by profession and also completed a master's in Islamic studies. Two very qualified and learned brothers, alhamdulillah. Assalamu alaikum, brothers. Jazakallah for coming down, inshallah.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah.
Okay, so let me start with Sheikh Fahim. I mean, how do we approach and prepare for this month of Ramadan?
Jazakallah, thank you for inviting us, and it's an honor that to be with you and with the listeners. Subhanallah, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said just before the month of Ramadan, towards the end of the month before, he said that قَدْ أَضَلَّكُمْ شَهْرٌ عَظِيمٌ مُبَارَكٌ, that indeed we are approaching a month which is عظيم, a great month, and which is mubarakah, as a blessed month. And it is no doubt an honor for us to be able to actually live through this month and fast in the month of Ramadan. Now, of course, we need the physical preparation, we need the mental preparation, we need the spiritual preparation.
I think it's more of the mental preparation.
To be honest, I am going through practical preparation. Okay. I've been avoiding tea in the morning. Okay. Because last year I experienced that after sort of midday, I had headache and I was struggling, So I thought I'll start with that, at least. I know that we shouldn't be fasting just before Ramadan, but I thought, I'll sort of go halfway.
Wean yourself off slowly.
Yes, it's a long day and it's the weather.
Especially living in the UK, I mean, you do 19 hours?
Yes, and hopefully if the weather stays like this, might be better for us, So to be honest, I'm actually, from a practical perspective, I'm sort of eating late after lunch, sort of whether tea or lunch, so that the body is ready, But of course, as you mentioned, the main preparation is the spiritual preparation. And subhanallah, this is a month that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he's to wait for this month and he's to prepare himself for this month, So we should be actually preparing ourselves for this month, and especially with our activities, with our timing, with our responsibilities, and somehow we need to. I'm talking about myself now. Actually, it's easier said than done.
You can talk about me. I don't have a problem.
It's easier said than done because we live in a busy life. You know?
Absolutely.
And we can't give up on work. I don't know about teaching. Maybe you have to go back to teaching. Isn't
Absolutely, yes, absolutely. Same days, speaking to the children all day long, tiring work.
it? No, of course.
And plus, you can't drink water as well.
Absolutely, yeah.
And of course, teaching is a hard job. It's a hard job, So therefore, we can't give up on any of these things. And to be honest, if we look at it from a different angle, although I was actually with Islamic Relief delivering training, and of course, month of Ramadan for the charities, it's a heavy day, But the first battle of Badr took place in Ramadan. So if we look at it from that angle, we don't have much excuse,
It's not much struggle, is it?
So inshallah, in terms of preparation, yes, I think the spiritual preparation is very important. And maybe for the whole month of Ramadan, yes, inshallah, we'll be fasting. But we need to make a special plan for our individual benefit, and in particular with the Qur'an.
Okay, alhamdulillah. Brother Nazul, how are you preparing?
It's a good question to ask, especially for myself as a teacher, but I think more relevantly for also my students. A lot of students we know in this, just after this half-term break now, will be starting or have already started exam, will be continuing sitting their exams, and some very important exams, GCSEs, A-level exams that they will be sitting. And in fact, it's a conversation that we had to have with those students to say, look, yes, you need to be mentally prepared, physically prepared, and also make some common sense adjustments to your lifestyle, maybe like Brother Fahim just mentioned for us. I think for myself, like you say, it's about trying to work out what your schedules for the day will be, trying to make sure that you can wake up early before Fajr time, have your sahri, do your Fajr, then go to sleep, then wake up again for school, for work. Getting those routines and times kind of mentally ready, and even practicing to some extent I think will be is important, because if you're not prepared, then you can easily fail.
Yeah, no, absolutely. In Ramadan, we generally go to the mosque, pray Taraweeh, invite people to iftar, stay up late to pray tahajjud, increase our charity. However, is there more to Ramadan than these actions? Because these are the things that we see the main points, isn't it? Whenever we discuss Ramadan, we discuss these points and say, oh, look, how do I increase? Can I finish my Qur'an this month? But is there anything more? Can we do more?
I think even the points that you mentioned are really important things, actually.
Yeah.
And like you said, going to the Masajid in the month, praying in the congregation. I think what is important, though, is that we don't just take them as ritual action. And actually, there are sometimes additional benefits that we don't necessarily always see. So like I said, praying together in congregation, meeting together, this is about strengthening our community, bringing our community together, bringing our families together. So I would say, those are things actually we can, if we think about it a little bit more, there's additional benefits you can also get, maybe.
Yeah, what's your thought on this, Sheikh?
No, of course, the point you're raising, they are sort of the main points. I think with anything in life, it's very important that we focus on the objective of any action, any doing, And as we all know, that the objective of Ramadan is لَعَلَّكُمْ تَتَّقُونَ, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, that the main objective is that we attain taqwa. So by the end of the month, we become muttaqi, we become God-fearing people, we become God-conscious people. So if that is the objective, then the next question would be, how do we achieve that objective? Of course, we see some of the things you mentioned that we do different ibadah, different activities. But
these are the main ones that we can see whenever there is a discussion. These are discussions that they take place. So we talk about Taraweeh, we talk about iftar, we talk about tahajjud, how to increase tasbih or Qur'an.
I think the issue of Taraweeh is a really interesting point, actually, because again, yes, we go and listen to the Imam reciting the Qur'an, and we all try to seek out the good masjid where there's beautiful recitation.
Best
Sometimes we will avoid the ones that maybe we are not too happy with. But actually, the Taraweeh and the Salah itself, like I say, there's sometimes a more important action that we miss, which is, did we take some time to understand what the Imam was reciting in the Taraweeh? Because it would be, and it is often a shame when actually we listen to it as a beautiful recitation, but we haven't benefited from the message itself. So I think sometimes those are some of the things very easy sometimes for us to miss out on, in this month.
And I think it's a very good point you raised. And just before that, we also look for a 8 rakat mosque and 20 rakat mosque.
Yeah, that's a
car
good
parking
one.
space in the 20 rakat. So I saw some signposts showing this way 8 rakat,
8
this way,
rakat,
20 rakat.
Okay.
It could happen that in a slightly bigger mosque, it can build up the congestion, especially when people living.
Or maybe because the Salah finish is so late. I think we'll finish about 1 o'clock in East London Mosque. 1:30 by the time you go home is 2 o'clock. That's why a lot of people, maybe they just pray 8. So that should be okay. Yeah.
Going back to our Ustad's point, actually, he raised a very good point, And the way I see it, of course, as we all know, that month of Ramadan, Shahru Ramadan, is just an ordinary month like any other months. But yet the position is being elevated. And that is because of as-siyam, because of fasting. So Ramadan is like any other ordinary month, but its position is high because of fasting. And then we see that the month of Ramadan and fasting is also being elevated because of what you just mentioned, because of Qur'an. شهر رمضان الذي أنزل فيه القرآن. So actually Qur'an has sort of raised the position of this month and fasting and fasting, So therefore this becomes the main sort of main focal point, And as you rightly mentioned that yes, we are doing a lot of ibadah, but if we want to benefit from the month of Ramadan, then actually we have to sort of try to understand the Qur'an. We have to try to understand the message of the Qur'an and what is it that Qur'an is trying to do in our life. Because Qur'an is being revealed for greater mission, for greater objective, for greater cause, So therefore that should be again a focal point.
Even if you look at this greater cause, I think like I said, these are we don't really hear much other than these points. So whether there's a lot of talks. I mean, there's a lot of seminars on Ramadan, and it's always been, look, this is what we need to increase. We need to understand the Quran. But my question would be: has Ramadan become a very festive season like Christmas? People start buying their Eid clothes way before Eid. They start decorating the house, busy with selecting the food for iftar, being healthy, fit during Ramadan. All of these things come in. With all of this in mind, what is the true meaning of Ramadan, and are we losing the true essence? Do you see? And I think that's the question, really. Are we really losing everything? Is it all mixed up and it's not clear? Because it can't be just that. What do you think?
I think, first of all, living in... has
it become a festive season?
Living in the UK, living in a society which you would have to say does have a materialistic kind of side to it. Sometimes we as Muslims, as a Muslim community, we are also affected by this, whereby what is important is like buying new things, having material things, keeping yourself entertained, and the spiritual kind of purification and the elevation of the self is actually missed in these societies. I think sometimes in the Muslim world, where we spend time in the Muslim world, you see that some of those aspects are not as strong. Like what is stronger is definitely the people coming together as a family, spending time together, but also that connection with the Quran, with their deen, with their religion. It's uplifting in that sense.
I think you talked about atmosphere or living in a society.
Yeah.
If you look at whether it is Pakistan, Bangladesh, or any of the third world countries, I've been there, and when you give sadaqah, you actually see the impact of sadaqah, and you see how the poor communities, how the struggling that they are going through, the struggles that they go through, and actually you can sense, well, look, my money or what you're contributing, you can see some sort of effect. But here, you could just give your sadaqah, or you just, there's so many charity groups that are out there, and it's just almost like, look, I'm just doing my bit. It's just, you touched on the mindset that this society creates. So does it create a festive mindset, or is there? How can we maybe separate that?
I mean, I think some of that.
Chef Fahim, you can come in anytime. Yeah, I'm sorry.
I don't like to be asked. I like asking. Now you're asking.
I'm sorry.
Of course, you're asking good questions. I think there is the element of festivity, and I usually say that in the month of Ramadan we are meant to be not eating, but it seems like we end up eating more.
Okay. Yes, it's almost.
And the way you can prove that, if you go to our shops and Misty shops, you'll see the queue is longer than other months, So there is the element of consumption, okay, and in fact consumption increases, although we don't eat during the daytime, but it increases in the night time, So again, maybe. Are we missing anything?
Yeah, that's the point. Has it become like a festive?
And as I mentioned that, when Allah says لَعَلَّكُمْ تَتَّقُونَ in relation to the month of Ramadan, that fasting is prescribed upon us. Interestingly, Tafsir al-Qurtubi actually gives a slightly different tafsir of this particular verse and this particular portion of the verse. And it is said that, when Allah says لَعَلَّكُمْ تَتَّقُونَ, it could mean لَعَلَّكُمْ تَضَعَفُونَ, that perhaps you become weaker. And so the perspective, is given here that, كُلَّمَا قَلَّ الْأَقْلِ أَكْلْ ضَعُفَتْ الشَّهَوَاتِ وَكُلَّمَا ضَعُفَتْ الشَّهَوَاتِ قَلَّ الْمَعَاصِي. So the explanation is that every time you eat less, you physically become weaker. And when you physically become weaker, your desires also become weaker. And when your desires are weaker, then you commit less sins. So this is again from a physical perspective. A physical perspective, So therefore, if we really want to achieve the objective, then we've got to take that into consideration. That are we actually going through the process? And are we actually achieving the objective? So just this, of course, a particular interpretation or particular tafsir or particular angle, that every time we eat less, we become physically weaker. And when we become physically weaker, then we commit less sins. Whether from a physical perspective or from other perspective, because it does sort of control the appetite, the desires, the shahawat that we have. So this is again one particular dimension that we also need to bear in mind, because if we miss the target, if we miss the objective, then we'll go through the month of Ramadan, but we will not be achieving the objective.
What I'll take a couple of texts. We've got quite a few texts here, so I'll take a couple which is relevant to what we're discussing, and then the other ones we will maybe discuss later on. So it says, Assalamu alaikum. What practical tips and advice would you give to students taking exams? I think this will be for Brother Nazrul, so keep that in mind. And the second one is, some primary school tell parents that children should not fast because it will be bad for their health. Should we listen to them? And another one, it says, my daughter has started fasting in year 5. I am fearful if the school finds out, I will be in trouble. Should I tell the school? Sister from Whitechapel, it says. So I think it's all directed to, well, you can both take them. You can both take them.
I think first of all, for students who are sitting exams in Ramadan, it's important, again, like we said before, that they prepare themselves for those exams in advance anyhow, which means that they have done their revision, they've done their studies, they're ready for those exams. They're not trying to revise or cram their studies in the night before, when they're also trying to achieve what they're trying to achieve in Ramadan in terms of their prayers and so on. That's one thing. Secondly, there are some practical things that students can do and to bear in mind, which are, in terms of Taraweeh Salah, they don't have to go and pray in the masjid. We know it's recommended, it's a good thing to do so. However, they are allowed to pray at home. If that's easier for them, then that's fine. Maybe that will reduce the amount of time and their endurance, physically, that they might become tired.
They can sleep more, isn't it? They can go to sleep early and maybe wake up.
They could sleep after the exams in the afternoon for a period of time, wake up, do some revision, break their fast, do their prayers, and then do a bit of revision, go back to sleep.
I think the power naps really help. So
absolutely,
look into power naps. I normally do that.
also students need to think about the types of foods that they're eating as well. So if they're eating a lot of greasy food or food that's quite heavy on the stomach, then that's not going to be very good for them. So this is advice that we've given our students, which is to make sure that they're eating foods which are high in carbohydrates that will release energy slowly through the day, cereals, wheat, these kind of foods, fresh food, fruit, vegetables. These are all important to bear in mind as practical kind of advice.
What about the second text? It says some primary schools tell parents that children should not fast because it will be bad for their health. What?
I was going to say, Jazakallah, for the points that I was going to sort of mention 3 points in relation to some of these questions and texts. That you've got the preparation, obligation, and then let's say training. Now preparation, as you mentioned, it's very important that we take the whole month as a whole sort of package rather than just looking at one particular day. So therefore, they may need to, in terms of workload, they may need to do that before even month of Ramadan, or time it in a way that it doesn't affect them so much, rest wise, work wise, study wise. So there has to be a balance between all these things, and the balance will only come through preparation. So if the family and the individuals, if they are aware and if they are prepared and they actually plan out and they stagger it and they spread out all their requirements, obligations, study, everything, that will definitely help. Secondly, obligation. And what I mean by this, that again, this is where we also need to strike a balance between what is obligatory and what is not obligatory. So in terms of individuals, when is it obligatory upon them? If they have reached the adulthood age, then there's no question about obligation. Then it's about preparation and training. If they haven't reached that age, I'm guessing one of the texts probably.
He's talking about primary school.
So they haven't reached the age of obligation, and this is where we also need to sort of strike a balance between preparation, training, and obligation. If it is not made obligatory upon them, then we should not sort of impose it for the whole month. So this is where we need to compromise. It could be that they keep in the weekend, or between during the weekdays, out of 5 days they probably keep 2, 3, so that they're being prepared, and at the same time they are not suffering,
I mean, my youngest son, when he was young, he did half a day, which I thought was quite good.
This is quite nice, isn't it?
It's a half a day. He felt
2 in 1 day, or 3 in
one day. He felt, he was actually being part of this thing. So I think the most important thing is making them be part of Ramadan.
And I think on that point, at the time of iftar, at the time of suhoor, is creating that sort of
atmosphere,
that they feel part of it, and they feel that something is happening, something is different, although they can eat in between, but actually keeping them as part of the whole thing, that would be the sort of preparation, encouragement, motivation, so that inshallah they are ready for adulthood.
Okay, inshallah. Jazakallah khair. We took a short break for Maghrib Salah. Our discussion tonight is on reflections on the month of Ramadan. So inshallah we are joined by Sheikh Fahim and Brother Nazrul Abu Yasser, inshallah. So call or text 074 77080248, or please you can use the Twitter. You can go and send us your tweet, inshallah. So let me start with Sheikh. During Ramadan we are encouraged to be charitable. Which is a very good action, and especially when we see the plight of the Ummah across the world, whether it is Syria, Iraq, Somalia, Burma, or the refugee crisis that we see. How far does our charity go to solve these problems?
Okay.
I know this is quite a long question, but I mean, how far? I mean, there's so many charity groups. I mean, if you open up any of the Asian channels or Islamic channels, you will find the whole month from Taraweeh to Iftar. It's just charity. I mean, does it really solve the problems? Or, I mean,
well, to be honest, there are 2 points here. One is that, how effective it is. Does it solve the problems?
Yeah, that's the effectiveness.
Yes. So this is one side. And the other side is doing righteous deeds, doing good deeds, doing amal salihat. I think we need to look into both aspects, that, it shouldn't be at the cost of the other. Okay. Now, there's no doubt that, we need to look at the whole effectiveness of the money that we, as Ummah, we have and we generate through charity and so forth. And we need to actually look into long-term solutions, the long-term development. My personal opinion is that whatever we do, unless we invest in education, in human development, we always talk about building buildings, and I'm talking about building people, and building people is a different ball game. Okay, so therefore, whatever money, whether through charity and through other initiatives, that we should be focusing more on building people, because it's like either you give a fish or give a fishing net. So therefore, if you give a fish, then they will come back again next day. Whereas if you give them fishing net, then hopefully you actually help them.
What if they don't want the fishing net and they're quite happy with the fish?
Well, I mean, naturally people would be more happy with fish than fishing net. You're giving them extra job. So I think this is what we need to question our charities and our as community. Even with the mosques, we need to question about the role of the mosque, the role that mosque plays. Because mosque should be guiding the community. So when we want to build the mosque, or when we want to, I always say that all the mosques, we say make Allah's house debt free, and then we will manage it the way we like it. What I'm trying to say is that that yes, of course there is a management. So I'm not saying that that there shouldn't be any. I'm not anti-establishment. That there will be management, but at the same time, mosque should be vibrant for the whole community. Mosque should be sort of men-friendly, women-friendly, children-friendly, guiding the community, educating the community, building the community. And you can sort of play the same thing with the charity, i.e. that the money is raised. Yes, there is the relief work, there is the emergency all this is fine. But so this is one side. And the other side, at the same time, I don't want to overlook the concept of charity and good deeds, as in the month of Ramadan, Allah increases the rewards,
I think my issue here, or if you general Ummah's issue, would be that, look, we raise a lot of money we raise, and we find that, look at the situation of Burma, look at the situation of the refugees, they don't have nowhere to go. But every time, it's almost like this charity groups thrive on this kind of situation where, look, every month, every Ramadan, or generally, it's just so much money is raised. And you've made a very nice point that, look, the Ummah is very generous. The Muslim Ummah is so generous, especially in this country. I think in the media they were saying, like, it's the Muslims who are more charitable. I think I was reading one of the articles. So, Brother Nazrul, I mean, what's your thought on this?
I do actually get a little bit, I don't know if the word is anxious is right, but I do get a little bit of maybe a bit of a tingle or something when, like yourself, you
I get a lot of tingles, but
you see repeatedly these campaigns for charity, for fundraising campaigns and so on. And it's not because I am avert to giving charity, of course not. And like the brother we've already said, giving charity is very important for the Muslim to do so, to give the zakat, to purify one's own wealth, but then to give sadaqah, to give lillah, and to give other forms of charity is very important. To give a smile is an important charity as well. But I think where I personally have a problem is, do we as an ummah, as a community, understand the place of charity and the place of that work, and what are the responsibilities we actually have? And what I mean by this is, look, even raising the amount of money. You said, we as a Muslim community, we raise a lot of money. Well, actually, it's a huge amount of money. But even then, I would say that amount of money that we do raise is just a drop in the ocean of what is actually needed in terms of to solve the actual problems that we as an ummah, throughout the world.
Are you saying we should collect more charity? I'm a little bit mixed up here.
Well, I'll clarify a little bit. Let's take even an example of in the UK. How much does the British government spend on the NHS? Do we know?
Not much, but
Not much.
yeah.
Well, actually,
One of the largest employers.
one of the largest amount of funds from the government goes to the NHS. It's 100 billion pounds. 100 billion pounds. That's to run the NHS, and even that's not enough. In
Yeah,
fact.
we had the
Even that-
junior
yeah.
doctor strike.
Even that isn't actually enough.
Yeah.
Now, we as an ummah here in the UK, when we give our £100, £1,000, 10,000, let's say 1 million, 2 million, 5 million, 10 million, do we honestly believe this money will solve the problem of the Muslim ummah? I'm not belittling here the charity work, but my question, the reason why I sometimes get a bit agitated, I think is a better word, I get a bit agitated. Sometimes we don't appreciate what is really needed to solve those problems that the ummah faces. And it's not actually only money. I would say what we, a lot of the countries where this money goes to, like I said, sometimes I can't be sure whether I'm giving this money, this charity, okay, I get the reward for it, but I don't even know where it's going to end up. The UK government doesn't know where the money it sends, where it ends up half the time. How can we be sure, through these, charity organization, where the money ends up? I don't know. I just think we have a bigger problem. Maybe it's a discussion for another show, or even here we can discuss in more detail. But some of those problems, the charity money, I think it has a place, but I worry sometimes that we neglect a greater responsibility.
I want to maybe just sorry, I know you want to comment. I just want to maybe ask you. You said it has a place, and I think that's where I have the problem. Yeah, it's basically, look, is it solving all of these issues, Somalia, Iraq war? Charities, is that the right thing to do? I think, look, charity has its place, like you said, yeah. But these are political issues, yeah. So refugees is political issues. If you look at Syria, Iraq, Somalia, these are war-torn countries. See, there's a government there, so there's a conflict between government and the people. So where does this charity go? So if you look at, I want to give you Palestine, for example, and if the problem of Palestine is about raising money and it's about charity, then how much money do we need to raise to solve these problems? That's a very legitimate question. Look, how much money do we need to, as a ummah, raise to solve the problem of Palestine? Because the issue here, like what you said, the issue here isn't money. It's a political issue, and I think that's where maybe a lot of us, I feel that when they talk about this crisis, I think, well, look, how much can you really? Even if you have millions and billions, will it really?
I think on this issue, actually, while it is a tradition, like you say, that on our satellite TV channels, even in our Masajid, you have a lot of charity fundraising. And I have spoken to sometimes fundraisers and asked them, look, about this question, obviously you're collecting this money, but do you appreciate there is a bigger picture here? And actually, alhamdulillah, I think a lot of people nowadays appreciate that there is a bigger picture, that some of the actual problems themselves, they can't be solved with just the charity work. So I think,
as long as people are realizing that, I think that's a start.
Maybe
I think that's what Sheikh Fahim, you're saying, that look, we need to educate people. And I think that's the education that is needed at this time. What do you think?
What we also need to appreciate that not everything is everyone's cup of tea, and not everyone can understand everything and sort of deliver everything. There are a lot of political issues and political solutions, but general public may not be able to actually connect and engage and actually sort of resolve those problems. Definitely there are heads, there are people, there are minds who will understand those things, and they need to be encouraged to actually further the political cause, so that they get a grip on that. But at the same time, when you talk about charity, for example, it's a very sort of common daily activity, and therefore you can't educate the entire community in one go, but charity will never be stopped. It will be given sort of on daily basis. I
don't think anyone, I hope our listeners are not thinking that we're against charity. It's just we're looking at certain problems, and does charity actually, I think one of the points that you've made, I'm quite interested in, is that, look, how do we educate our ummah. And obviously you said, look, a lot of people, it's not their cup of tea, or they don't understand this. You know,
I will say one thing that I think sometimes there can potentially be a problem. The problem is when sometimes we may give charity and then we feel as though we have done our job and we have done our part.
Yeah.
And actually, I believe that as a Muslim community, there's more that we probably need to do in terms of raising awareness of some of the difficulties, tribulations, the problems that we as a ummah face, whether here even in the UK or internationally. But you know, as a Muslim ummah, again in Ramadan, we talked about understanding the Qur'an. The Qur'an, Islam has put a responsibility on our shoulders.
Yeah.
You know, to be able to look after our own affairs, look after the affairs of others. And from that point of view, I would say sometimes giving the charity money, yes, it's good, but we can sometimes feel like, oh, I've done my job, that's fine, you know.
I mean, the approach I will take, you know, there are again a couple of points.
Yeah.
Accountability is an issue.
Yeah.
Strategical thinking is another issue. And then at the same time, also what we shouldn't underestimate our ability and our contribution. So again, we live in a society that, you know, we are fortunate that we can give. Not many people in other parts of the world can give. So we shouldn't underestimate that position. By virtue, you know, we are just here, we are blessed. You know, so therefore, my personal opinion, you know, that should be sort of maintained, encouraged, you know. But at the same time, we need to bring in the accountability. And again, we live in a society, Allah has blessed us with the ability to question and think and reflect. And we are conscious that, you know, we can hold people to accountability. So therefore, we as community also need to actually think about accountability. Charities individually and collectively, that where is the money going to? Where is the money sort of spent on? And this is where the whole strategical thinking comes in. That strategically, again, we need to sort of set long-term goals. And what I'm trying to say, you know, so those three things, you know, again, we are fortunate that living in the society, you know, we can actually sort of have say in those areas rather than, unfortunately, in many Muslim
I think
countries.
you know you've made a very important point, and it got me thinking. Is that, look, you know, we are in a very, very unique position. So, for example, if you look at the atrocities that are happening in the Muslim world, whether it is refugees or whether it is the wars, you find the general public, they don't have a voice. And I think the point that you've made is really important, that, look, we have a voice. In fact, we can go in the media. We can go onto the websites and the internet, and we have a free voice where we can speak against these injustice. Yeah. So I think this is the uniqueness. So you know, thank you for that. I think that's a very important point that you've made. Let me go into, I think, more on Ramadan. I think we've talked about charity quite a bit. Beginning of every Ramadan and ending, we have a big issue with unity. You're laughing here, yeah. Saudi Arabia starts on one day. Egypt starts another day. Pakistan, Iran, Bangladesh all start on the different days. Why is that? I mean, they're quite close. I mean, Saudi Arabia and Egypt is almost like a border. And Bangladesh, Pakistan, India is just...
I mean, I would simply put it down to, you know, sometimes those differences are not down to an Islamic reason, are down to political reasons and nationalistic reasons. That's what I think. You know, sometimes you will see that
the artificial borders, you mean?
Artificial borders, or, you know, the government's trying to pull sway in some form or another. I think most of the ummah, we understand and we know that you fast when the moon is sighted, and you cease fasting when the moon is sighted. And if you don't see the moon, you should, you know, complete it as 30 days. You know, this is our...
I wish it was as simplistic as it is.
Absolutely, but I think some countries, even though a sighting had been verified in a different country, somewhere else will say, no, we haven't sighted it, so therefore we are not going to proclaim the start of Ramadan.
Sheikh Fahim?
I wish if I had the solution to this problem. Actually,
is that $1 million question? Yeah.
No, I mean, especially in the West, we do have problems. Many brothers and sisters are working in professional fields, and when it comes to taking a day off for Eid, whether it's school or other professional places, it doesn't give a good picture. And especially they will question, with this all the scientific approach and everything. You should be able to sort of calculate and work out. And I don't think it is impossible to actually resolve this problem. And it's not about sort of being different or having different opinions. I mean, we need to grow up that there can be different opinions. There can be different sort of perspectives. And we need to sort of come to terms that we still can be positive and work together despite having our difference of opinions. On any matter, whether this or any matter. So I think there is the element of.
Do you think it's nationalism? Do you think it's because look, I'm a Saudi and I'm an Egyptian and I don't really like the Saudis, so therefore I'm not going to follow them?
I think, do you know what? I would put nationalism as third problem. To me, the first problem is ignorance. Okay, and the second problem is actually it's more of a political problem. So what I mean by ignorance,
you're making a very, very big statement, because if you look at the scholars, of these countries, these respected countries, they are the ones that actually, so they can't be ignorant. I can accept maybe public myself. I could be ignorant.
No, that's fine. Of course, and under no circumstance, I'm not saying any scholar. I mean, I personally don't like to speak against any scholar, even if I don't agree with them or if I don't understand their perspective. So by no means I want anyone to take that understanding. I don't speak against scholars,
Okay.
Even though I may not understand their opinion or may not agree with their opinion, I always have respect for the scholars,
Okay, now of course
So I think, but as he correctly pointed out, it can be misunderstood, When I talk about ignorance, I don't mean about the scholars. With all due respect, scholars don't have full control over those things on a national level in any country.
So are you saying it's the governments then?
Well,
I'm actually pinning you down, because
that's not.
I know generally this is the case, isn't it? Because either we don't blame the scholars, because obviously we respect them. We can't really say it's the general public, because they don't really have an influence. So really, it's our government.
I'll tell you one thing that as a general ummah that we can do, we should ignore those proclamations from the governments. As simple as that. I think it's we live in a world now where we can
global village
where you can send messages but from your phone across the world to say where the moon's been sighted, and if it's been sighted by somebody back home in a village somewhere and they're trustworthy and it's been verified, then we should all just start fasting. And we should ignore sometimes these proclamations from certain governments or even institutions, because I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but I would say that is the sunnah way of doing it, because Rasulullah sallam, and people in his time, that when they were trustworthy people, they were Muslim, they sighted the moon, others accepted it and they fasted.
I think what is more practical, again, I could be wrong, that there is more conversation.
We want this practical discussion.
There's more sort of communication taking place in this country among Muslims, or even on scholarly level, and especially I'm aware of a lot of young scholars, mashallah, there is this sort of, despite difference of opinion.
Difference of opinion we accept, I believe.
I think actually we need to look at it from that angle then. It's not about looking at the solution from outside, rather we need to actually come up with our own solutions from within. And this is where a lot of frank discussion needs to take place among scholars and also other sort of stakeholders within, let's say, in the UK. And I think there is some healthy discussion happening, building up, taking place. Maybe it's a matter of time, inshallah, that there is a lot of from my experience of the last 5 years, if you look at scholars from sort of Deoband background, from Saudi background, from Masajid background, there is a lot of sort of respect now. There's a lot of open discussion. So maybe inshallah we need to actually look for solution within rather than outside.
That's a very good point. I want to go back to the Qur'an. Actually, Allah says in verse, Allah says in the Qur'an, Ramadan is the month in which the Qur'an was sent down as a guidance to mankind, and a clear guidance and judgment, so mankind will distinguish from right and wrong. Allah discusses in this verse that the Qur'an was revealed as a guidance, a huda, for all of mankind. What is this huda and how does it manifest?
Jazakallah. No, very, very important point. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, شهر رمضان الذي أنزل فيه القرآن هدى للناس وبينات من الهدى والفرقان. So the first thing is that, as I mentioned earlier, that in the month of Ramadan, Allah has revealed the Quran, and as a result of that, the position of this month is elevated. Now, huda or hidayah, it is the ultimate guidance, and that is the ultimate faith in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And of course, we live in a society, we live in a world where millions of people who do not believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the main sort of hidayah here is having that belief in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And of course, with the belief, with the iman comes the a'mal, the actions, the deeds, So I think Allah has revealed the Quran not for any other reason but for guidance. And this is what we also find, ذَلِكَ الْكِتَابُ لَا رَيْبَ فِيهِ هُدًى لِلْمُتَّقِينَ. So we find that the Quran, although Quran talks about as shifa, as cure, as rahmah, but the primary role of the Quran is al-hidayah, to guide the mankind. Because one thing we all know that, yes, we can be good Muslims and not so good Muslims, but if we do not have iman, then our future is bleak. There's nothing in the hereafter. So therefore, this is the primary role that that the Quran is being revealed to actually guide the mankind, and the fundamental guidance is to have faith, have iman in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is why the Quran is being revealed. And this is why, when you mentioned earlier that, that we should study the Quran so that we understand the hidayah, guidance. Because Quran is not for decoration. It's for guidance. And guidance can only be sort of benefited from when you understand that message and guidance. And this is why, as we mentioned earlier, that what we should be trying to do, that in the month of Ramadan, our study or level of study should increase. And this is where planning comes in, preparation comes in. This is in terms of understanding the Quran, benefiting from the guidance of the Quran. But at the same time, there is also the element of tilawah. As we know that in the month of Ramadan, Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam used to recite the Quran to Jibril alayhi salam. Because if we look at the role of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, I call it JD, the job description of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam.
That's a new one, JD.
هو الذي أرسل رسوله بالهدى ربنا وبعث فيهم رسولا منهم يتلو عليهم آياتك ويعلمهم الكتاب والحكمة ويزكيهم. This verse is repeated 3-4 times in the Quran, outlining 4 tasks or 4 job description of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And all the verses, they repeat those 4 tasks. And one of them is yatlu alayhim ayatika, the element of tilawa. And this is why we have seen that in the month of Ramadan, the Taraweeh prayer, the tilawa of the Quran, of course, tilawa with understanding is at the top. But unfortunately, not everyone can read the Quran with understanding. So therefore, even if in 1 month we cannot learn everything, so ideally 11 months should be spent on studying the Quran and trying to understand. And this 1 whole month is a spiritual exercise. Okay. And the biggest tool for the spiritual exercise is tilawat al-Quran. And the power of tilawat al-Quran is immense. So from that angle, the tilawah comes in, the focus is there. But other 11 months should be used for studying the Quran so that we understand the guidance of the Quran.
Okay, Jazakallah khair. Brother Nazm?
Yeah, I think Huda we understand as, like you say, guidance, understanding the distinction between the right way and the wrong way. This is what guidance does. It guides you to the correct way and not the incorrect way. I think maybe the other thing to also note here is that the Quran is a guidance for every single matter in our life. So we know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has told us وَنَزَّلْنَا عَلَيْكَ الْكِتَابَ تِبْيَانًا لِكُلِّ شَيْءٍ, that He has revealed unto us this book, which is a clear explanation for everything. And this is where I think guidance is important, that actually what makes our deen quite unique in this sense is that this guidance, this huda, is for anything and everything, whether it be our personal matters in regards to our wife, our families, whether it be in regards to our ibadah, or something as trivial, you might say, as going to the toilet, to something like we talked about earlier, charity and politics and the ummah or the world itself. You know, actually, this is where we seek guidance. Because as mankind, you know, if we were to try and solve our own problems, then we would come out with 100 different answers.
Yeah.
You know, who would be correct? You know, and this is sometimes where the oppression can happen, where one person says, "No, I'm correct. I'll implement my way, or I'll follow my way. Everyone else has to follow." And actually, the word huda as well, you know, it comes from the Sheikh can maybe add to this, but from a derivative of, I think, hadiya, which means you know, like a gift. So this is a gift from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, this guidance. Subhanallah.
So can you imagine, without having that, we'd be lost. And maybe is that the reason we're lost at this moment? That if you look at the state of the Muslim Ummah, if you look at the situation of the Muslim Ummah at this moment, is it because we're not following the guidance?
I think
Sheikh
has a part in it.
What do you think?
Two level of hidayah. One is belief in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And of course, those who do not believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it is a gift. And this is why, as we know, that the uncle of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, if the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam could have given guidance and hidayah to anyone, he would have definitely given it to his uncle Abu Talib. And subhanallah, he was a great supporter. And the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam was saying, just declare it and I will do the rest. It's like, you know, you just say it and sign it and I'll fill up the form, you know. But again, he couldn't, and Allah revealed that Allah revealed to Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, "Innaka la tahdi man ahbabta, walakin Allah yahdi man yasha." So we are so fortunate that Allah has guided us. That is in terms of the belief. And then the second or higher level hidayah, huda, and the guidance is to be able to do the right thing in life. To be guided in everything rightly.
Like even, my understanding is organizing society. So if you look at, like, if we talk about guidance, you know, anything, I mean, as a business or any institution, you know, they have a guide of how to follow this. So you're a teacher, you know, you work for a big institution, and there's a certain guide you follow, there's certain things you can't do and you can do. And this is regulated, isn't it? And that's how I understand you know, guidance from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that this Qur'an came to regulate our affairs, how we live.
You have to have rules, you have to have laws, you have to have regulations.
And not all just on your personal ibadat, which is absolute. There's no question about that. But in terms of, you know, our family structure, our social structure, even our economics. Look at how we're trading now. You know, some of we're not sure whether it's halal or haram. A lot of our community are trading in riba, and riba has become so easy to get. It's so easy to go into riba.
Well, another point on economics is if we look at world economics, you have organizations like Oxfam who have produced reports making it very clear that the vast majority of wealth, something like 95% of the world's wealth, is in the hands of just maybe 5% of people. You know, and of course, you know, we can, if we reflect on the Quran and we study and we understand it, we find Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has completely spoken out against this type of hoarding or circulating of the wealth amongst just a few people. And actually, this is where huda, guidance, you know, we as a mankind could really benefit from.
I think a very nice point. If you look at the poverty of the Muslim world, and we talked about charity, and we said, look, how charity can only do so much. But look at the recent controversy with regards to Panama Papers, where most of our rulers and business people and all those people that the Muslims are meant to trust, they've hid their money offshore. And our people, our ummah is dying, bleeding because they don't have food. And that's where huda comes in. This is where I see that where is this guidance, where is it implemented, and how can we implement this? I mean, how can we implement this?
No, of course, as you mentioned, that we need guidance on our day-to-day life, and after receiving the ultimate guidance of believing in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we then need our daily guidance on our sort of in our day-to-day life, and again, this is where we need to educate ourselves as well as the community, because only through understanding, through awareness, through knowledge, we can benefit more from that, and this is where there is need for collective struggle, that we raise the standard of the ummah collectively.
Alhamdulillah. I'm going to read out some text. It could be some of them are actually they are in our Twitter. Yeah. So let me just read those out. It is fantastic that the ummah gets together to raise money in Ramadan, but sometimes it just feels like we have a spoon to use to empty a sinking boat. How did the Sahabas deal with this type of situation? That's a very good question, actually. And then the second one, these are all from Twitter accounts. So I understand reading the whole Qur'an in Ramadan. I'd highly recommend. But as a young person, I find watching Islamic YouTube clips beneficial. Okay, I think that's a point. There's another text here or Twitter from our Twitter. Says, my friend at college smokes during Ramadan. Every time I tell him not to, he freaks out at me and starts calling me an extremist. Sometimes I feel I might be. What advice can I give him? Oh my God. Okay, so do you want to take that, because you've got
I think I'll come to that point later. I think the earlier message is quite important, and I also don't think we should be preaching too much to people. I mean, he made a good point that reading the whole Quran is, ideally speaking, it is recommended, it is nice, but the reality is that a lot of people would be struggling. So therefore, I mean, yes, there is the idealism. There is a good practice and there is the minimum requirement. So I think with anything in life, we should take the minimum requirement approach and then try to slowly build up on good practices. So of course, if he finds it difficult to either recite the whole Quran or read the whole Quran, and if he finds it more interesting or beneficial, let's say, I would say for him this is good, because today he will find this beneficial, and through this beneficial knowledge, tomorrow he will find the recitation and reading more sort of engaging. So
very good point,
so for him, that's perfectly fine. And I would say with a lot of people, see, tilawa, either listening or reciting, if it's not done properly, if it's not done out of sort of your own self, then it will become again, you'll develop resentment against that, and that shouldn't
okay,
happen.
Quickly, I want to go on to smoking. Is he an extremist because he said smoking is not allowed?
I'd probably say, he's advised his friend, you tell him maybe once, you tell him twice, maybe try a third time. After that, he's tried his best. May Allah guide his friend. I guess, like you said, if you keep on going on and on, sometimes if the person isn't receptive at that point in time, it could cause problems. But we ask Allah, to make it easy for all the people, all the Muslims who are fasting.
Okay, I want to talk about the time of Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam and the Sahabas. Yeah, and in the past, at the time of Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, how was Ramadan viewed, and what did they do in Ramadan? What were they preoccupied with?
Fasting. Were they fasting?
They were fasting, of course.
Reciting Qur'an.
Yeah.
I think earlier on, brother,
I think
Fahim mentioned about Battle of Badr.
Yeah.
And we know that there are a number of examples of where the Muslims at that
time... Did they buy the Eid clothes before Ramadan?
I don't know. Maybe Sheikh can tell us.
No, I think sometimes we idealize too much. Sahabas, with all due respect, they were also human beings. So they were conducting their normal life. They were, of course, if they were in our time now, they would be going to teaching in the morning and do the teaching and come back home, So what I'm trying to say is that, they conducted a normal life, in terms of their daily obligations, because earning is an obligation.
Absolutely,
okay? And therefore, yes, it will be slightly different nowadays. It has become more materially sort of driven, but earning is an obligation. So therefore, we need to also get on with our day-to-day life obligations. This is one thing. Secondly, yes, Islam should be at the forefront. In terms of understanding Islam, practicing Islam, conveying the message of Islam, So all these things should be done along with our daily obligations, what should also happen in the month of Ramadan, and as we all know, and also from the hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that the nawafil ibadah, the position of nawafil ibadah is elevated to the level of fard. And the point I'm trying to make is that, yes, these are sort of relatively lesser degree ibadah, but at the same time, we shouldn't underestimate the virtue of the nawafil ibadah in the month of Ramadan. So we all should try our best. So, for example, itikaf is an nafil ibadah. Even Tarawih prayer, broadly speaking, technically speaking, is not obligatory. Then is mandub, recommended. Okay, so therefore there are a lot of nawafil ibadah that we find are being practiced by the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and the companions. Starting with suhoor, starting with tarawih prayer, all those different things. I think we should sort of try our best to do all these things in line, along with our daily.
I think where my question is basically. We talk about a lot of personal ibadat, and when we look at the seerah and we look at the Ramadan of the past, we see that they conquered many lands, and they were striving to take the Dawa, open up new lands, and the struggle even went more than the usual. So in Ramadan they did extra, in terms of propagating the deen, and I think this is where maybe it's missing at this moment. So if you look at the Dawa, where does it fit in? You see, so yes, we're very inward. We want to try and perfect our salah and maybe do that extra ibadat that you have just mentioned. But where is the collective ummah? Where is that? Because we don't see this, and I think that's where maybe it's missing, because it's become very personal, very and why I'm saying that is it because I think Brother Nazul touched on that, is that we live in this society where it's very individualistic. So we're only thinking about, look, my family, I need to do this. What the Sahabas, did they have this kind of mentality? You see?
I think this is where, again, we can't sort of take out from the equation the 11 months. What I'm trying to say is that, we can't just look at that 1 month.
Absolutely,
it's the 12
this month is the training month, yeah?
Course, So it's the whole 12 months, i.e. your mission of your life. And this is where, again, we have to look at it from a broader perspective, So this is something very important, that, it's not just about this 1 month.
Yeah.
It's about reviewing our life. It's about reviewing our priorities, and I think definitely there's the element of the individualistic mentality, because this society has produced independent, individualistic mindset, because everyone is working, and therefore, see, even within the families, if you look at traditionally, family, brothers, siblings, they were very sort of strong hold. Now even the siblings,
they don't meet.
They don't meet, because everyone is, even at wedding, they've got the saving, they will hire the hall, and everything is given to the. I mean, I remember, in our time, if any friend was to get married, we used to do the servicing and everything. Nowadays, you just go, with your nice clothes and
Before we never used to wear nice clothes, isn't it?
Nowadays, you can even ask who is the host at a wedding. What I mean by, of course, if there's a wedding, there's a host. The host invites. In the past, the host would come around and say, are you eating? And, nowadays, the host is sitting at the front taking photos.
And
you have the manager asking you eating
asking if the food is
and passing his card out for the next wedding.
So I think there's no doubt that, there is the effect of this society that we live in. And this society has sort of this negative side of individualism, independency. This doesn't mean that anything wrong with independency and individualism. That there are to a certain extent.
I think independency is different than individualism.
Yes,
I think individualism is a mindset where you say, look, I put myself, I come first.
Of course.
And then maybe my next door neighbor, and then maybe the ummah. Yeah, this concept of ummah isn't there.
Yes.
I mean, let me go back to your original question, which was about what were the Sahaba?
So what were the Sahaba? How did they?
What were they doing in Ramadan? I think an important distinction to make is that actually in the society of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and of the Sahaba radiallahu anhum, like you say, what we can see clearly is that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was the head of state, and a lot of his Sahaba radiallahu anhum were also organizing and running that state. So you're
ministers
of that state. And so you're absolutely right. You will see them doing actions in that regard in Ramadan and outside of Ramadan, and those things have been reported to us. And you will see examples of, like we said before, where sometimes
a lot of
there was
battles
conflict.
actually took place in Ramadan.
Sometimes there was conflict between
yeah.
Muslims and non-Muslims. Sometimes there was fighting, and the Qur'an, it talks about these, mentioned these issues and how we should conduct ourselves in regards to these matters as well. But I think that's sometimes where we might feel as though, look, our role often is in the society as individuals, whereas, the companions and even the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, they had other roles in society, more, very significant roles, which we might think actually, we're not doing them, which is true, we're not, because we don't have those roles.
Okay, inshallah. Do you know what? We're just gone over our we've got a couple of minutes. I've got last one, maybe last. What advice would you give our listeners, and how can they make the most of Ramadan? So quick, short nasiha, inshallah, and then we'll finish. I think we've gone over about 10 minutes. Sheikh, do you wanna?
Jazakallah. Well, the advice is for myself, actually. I think, of course, fasting, that we should all try our best, regardless of the challenges that we have. That goes without saying. And then I would say 3 things. Qur'an comes before everything else. So I think that we need to find some time in terms of doing the tilawah of the Qur'an, and even if necessary, also actually learning how to recite the Qur'an correctly. If also opportunity permits, in terms of studying the Qur'an. So the whole Qur'an, tilawah, studying, memorization, everything should, we should try our best. Even if we increase one short surah or some lines, because hifz also helps your spirituality. Okay, so sahih tilawah, hifz, tilawah, memorization, and studying the Quran. So these are different aspects of the Quran. Salah is also very important. I don't mean the 5 times daily prayer, which is
a must,
of course, in terms of Tarawih prayer, as well as also if you can actually increase our Nawafil prayers. Okay. Normally we can't do that. So in the month of Ramadan, if we can actually increase that along with Tarawih and Tahajjud prayer, and in particular, hopefully in the last 10 nights of the month, So tilawah, salah, and also other good deeds, and that will include charity as well.
Inshallah. Jazakallah khair. Brother Nazul, last words, if you can.
I'd probably just add that it's always good to set some targets and set some, challenging targets, but you aim for them, you try your best. If they're not challenging, sometimes we don't try as hard as we could do. Maybe we don't reach, like we said before, we don't manage to read the entire Quran. Maybe we manage to read half or 3/4 of it. Well, that's good. So you aim for that, and you get the reward for making the intention that's something that you wanted to try and do, and you put some effort behind it. And maybe the second point, from today's discussion, I would say, is really that we think about our ummah. We think about some of the wider issues that the Quran also came down and addressed in terms of guidance. How can we benefit from that guidance, that we don't just park our deen and Islam into just being individualistic, but actually there's a bigger role that we all need to play.
Alhamdulillah, Jazakallah khair. Alhamdulillah, it's been a very enlightening evening. I'm sure we have gained so much from our Sheikh and our brother Nazul Abu Yasir. Jazakallah khair, brothers. And I would request our guests to come down for future shows, inshallah. And a special thanks to all our listeners for listening and contributing to this show. This is our last show before Ramadan, so I hope you have enjoyed all the topics and discussions we have had over the past 6 months. I know I have learned so much and really enjoyed these discussions, especially some of the texts that was sent by our listeners. Jazakallah khair for sending those texts. Sorry we couldn't take all of them. please join us again after Ramadan. And if you have any questions or suggestions with regards to the show, please let us know. You can visit our website and contact us there, inshallah. You can also download any of our previous shows that you may have missed. Our website is straight-talk.co.uk. You can also follow us on Twitter at Middle Path Radio and continue with this discussion, inshallah. Again, thank you for listening to Middle Path Radio. I hope you have a wonderful Ramadan, and please remember all the brothers in Middle Path Radio in your duas. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Middle Path Radio, your number one online Islamic talk station.